Man. Mm. There we go. Oh my god.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session for New York Music Month Extended Play. It's one of our master classes with the New York chapter of the Recording Academy. We're super excited to kick it off. My name is Shira Gans, and I'm with the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. If you're not familiar with our office, we are the agency that supports all the creative industries in New York City. One of the ways we do that is through initiatives like New York Music Month Extended Play. We've been doing this since January this year in the pandemic with all of our programming virtual. I'm going to put in the chat the URL for the website where you can check out everything that's happened to date and what's going to be coming up through the rest of the month. So I hope you enjoy today's session. And without further ado, I will hand it off to our panelists today. Thanks and enjoy.
Okay, I guess we're live. Welcome, everyone. First of all, thank you for joining us this afternoon now. So today we're basically going to talk about our workflow as far as remote mixing, which has become pretty popular, first off through the pandemic. But most of us in the industry have sort of been doing it for a few years now. And we just wanted to talk about our workflows. And we're going to try to make this a pretty much a unique experience in the sense that, you know, you have 3 mix engineers, and one of the mix engineers is actually a label executive, and Duro is going to come at it a little bit more from that angle about how it works from the label side of things and how they've been working on it. And MarioSo and I are going to come at it from the mixing standpoint on how we work. The one thing I do want to say is feel free to post your questions. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So any questions you have, please feel free to just shoot them out to us. It's going to go really fast, so we're going to try to explain as much as we can. I've been now doing remote mixing this way for about close to 8 years now. And for me, it's been super helpful because, you know, coming up in the business, working in studios and having people in the room with you, the one thing that I've noticed from my experience is when you're in the studio and you're in a beautiful room that sounds great, everything to everyone's ear sounds great, and then they leave the studio and it's not the same as what you remember it. So what's really nice about working this way is because of the way the business has changed, it's changed in the sense that everyone has their own studio, they have their own monitors that they're used to in their environment, and it helps with how you perceive the mix. So the way that I've been working is I pretty much work in the sense that I'm sharing my screen, which I'll do right now so everyone could see exactly how I'm working. So you're looking at my Pro Tools screen, right? And you're able to see that. My client's able to see that. All the tracks are laid out in front of you. And then we stream it at full quality using audio movers. And if you can see this, we're at 32-bit, or you can go down to 24, or if someone's connection is terrible, you have your MP3 options. But the nice thing about this is you can do full wave quality, and most people at this point do have strong internet connection. For me, the way that I work personally is just extremely interactive because I can have the producer, the artist, the label all on the stream at once, and everyone's hearing the same exact thing, and we can go over the mixes. So generally the way that I like to work is when I get to about 80 to 90% of the mix when it's finished. And when I say that far, you know, the last 10% is when I'm getting into like some fancy automation and maybe some effects and delay throws and things of that nature. So what starts happening is when I get to that 80 to 90%, I'll get the client involved. And generally, the way that I like to work is I like to get whoever produced the record first, because if they're hearing their production the way that they intend to, then by the time it gets to the artist, they're focused so much more on their vocals, and then they can, everything else just becomes easier. So I give them that, I call it the initial shock value. So they hear the song first, and right away they're thinking by feel and saying, okay, turn this up, turn this down, and they're kind of just going along with their quick notes, right? By the time we're done with that, they're comfortable enough to sit with the mix and listen to it. And then they sit with it, and I usually give the client about 2 rounds of changes. I feel like 2 rounds of changes is a pretty good number to work with, because usually the most of the changes happen within round one, and round two becomes like just the cleanup and maybe try another dB here or another dB there, so things of that. And it's a pretty fluid workflow from my point of view. I know Mario, so I'm going to hand it off to him for a second, but there's a similarity in how we work, and there's also differences. But the beauty of it is first off, and he'll touch upon that because of where some of his clients are, but us having clients overseas, this has helped us tremendously and avoided the back and forth, and also pick up more work probably, and because of the fact that it is so easy to work with people all over the world at this point. So I'm going to hand it off to him now, and let him do some of the chatting on this. Go ahead, man.
So yeah, just to bounce off
Your
what
mic's muted.
am I
We
there? You
can't.
hear me now?
Hold on.
Do you hear me now?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, great. So just to bounce off what Ariel was saying, yeah, this is something that we've been practicing for quite some time, and like he said, since a lot of my clients, some of them are based not just in the New York area, some are based in Puerto Rico, many are based in Puerto Rico, many are based in even in South America. So to kind of speed up the process of the back and forth, rather than sending an MP3 going back and forth and waiting for them to hear the MP3, call me back and let me, oh hey, we need to make this change or this change, and this kind of like shrunk all of that wasted time away. It pretty much kind of like made it go away. And it's pretty simple. I mean, one key thing that I like to do when I work this way for my clients, it's pretty much on a Zoom session like this, but I am also streaming using a third-party program as well called Audio Movers. Me and Ariel will go more into that in detail, but one of the key things I like doing with Zoom and using Audio Movers is that I'll also give access not just to my clients. I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen just for briefly, and oops, let me just I'll give access to my screen to my clients. And but another thing that I like to share with my clients is my transport. So if I have, did I show the mixer? Oh, let me show the mixer. I'm sorry. Let me try that one more time. So I'll give access to the clients. I'll also access the remote, and I'll let the clients basically like come up here and have the ability to hit play, stop, fast forward, and rewind all they want on my session. It doesn't really bother me, because what happens is that we're going back and forth and we're just listening down to the session. Once they hear something they don't like, they can automatically stop it. I don't have to wait for them to kind of like I don't have to hear them yell like, hey, wait, stop right there. No, they can just go ahead and stop, and they say, hey, that section right there where you were at, I want to raise something immediately. I want to there's something there that I'd like to mute out or something like that. But it helps, as opposed to, like we were saying, going back and forth with the whole, oh, you know what I'm saying, send me an MP3, and they got to give me in detail, oh, at minute such and such, you know what I'm saying, get rid of this little thing that I heard there. No, now we can just kind of do it right on the fly, and it's equivalent to almost having them in the studio. It's almost like I'm in the studio, they're in the booth. We're just communicating just in two different parts of the studio. So it continues that almost that process, that flow that we would have if we were all together in the studio. And there's always there's a lot of talk about losing the collaboration because of what's been going on. But I think if you're communicating and you're speaking, you're allowing the collaboration. You're also allowing creativity to continue to work between producer, artist, engineer. And this honestly has probably been a major game changer during the pandemic. The pandemic might have shown up and it might have said, oh, hey, you're on lockdown now, but the creative individuals, we just can't stay on lockdown. We got to maintain a sense of creativity. So we just can't sit here and just like not do anything. We got to continue to do our thing creative. And this is one of the key ways we were able to achieve that more so than others during the pandemic. You want to jump on this, A?
Yeah. Also, the other thing I was going to say is, for me, the difference was that when people were sitting in a studio with you, they they weren't ever sitting in the sweet spot like you, right? So they're sitting either behind the producer desk or to the side of you, and they might be hearing the bass a little more, and they might say, turn the bass down, take off a little low end, or I'm not hearing enough bass, because depending on where they're sitting in the room. And what I find is now, because they are in their home and wherever they're comfortable listening to the mixes, they're able to make more better decisions on where things are sitting, because they understand their room and their speakers. And that's been the change for me. And obviously it depends on clients. I have some clients that, and I rarely do this, but I'm working on a project now that the producer and I sit for hours and we're working on it together, and he just enjoys the process of watching what's going on with his song. And it's not like, there needs to be an understanding where it's not like, the one thing you don't want happening is it's someone telling you, hey, stop there, what are you doing to the kick, are you turning up too much bass, and they don't understand what you're doing. So but when you have somebody that allows you to sort of work in a just kind of work and just watch what you're doing,
experimental moment.
And then you can ask them questions, it becomes, for me, it's been more of a collaborative effort working this way. And now even more so, because Audio Movers, in the last month and a half, they dropped an app where now, I mean, you used to go on a web browser and listen. Now the app is a lot more stable. And they can be anywhere. I've had guys go do a car test, they'll be like, hey, there it is. You can pretty much just go into the car, you can go somewhere else, you can do whatever you can, and just make things like, it's so much easier now with collaborating. And I don't know, for me, I'm not sure if I would go back. I mean, I do miss at times being in the studio, but I think for me it's just the nostalgic thought of being in the room and being in a studio with somebody. But there's also a part that used to bounce around from different rooms mixing, and now you're in your room. So I feel like my mixes have gotten a lot better, because I'm used to my room. I'm able to tweak my room how I want. If I need to move panels around, if I need to, calibrate the speakers differently or move things around or whatever, it's my room and I know it, and it's not going to change. I want to hand it off to Duro quick, because this is, like I said, it's going to go quickly.
Yeah, time goes quickly, right?
He's the OG, so we're going to let him speak now.
Yeah. So I think echoing with what Ariel and MarioSo was saying about just how crucial, just how clutch being able to mix remotely was during a pandemic. I mean, it could have completely shut things down if we were still locked in and locked into all being in the same room at the same time. And remote mixing, it's evolved. I think it's something that we've all been doing for, I mean, I would say as long as there's been MP3s, even prior, because prior to MP3s, we'd mix a song, we'd have to use something called ISDN to transfer it digitally from one coast to another, which was very expensive and still time consuming. because you'd have to upload it, send it across, record it, get it to messenger it to the other person. It's very still complicated, could still take a whole day. And then we moved to MP3s, and that sped things up a bit. But this is just so much more advanced and so much more in real time, where we can get things done, and like I said, we can communicate on the fly, make changes, be in the space that we feel most comfortable listening to. You have some people, I've had clients and even producers that I work with that like to test their mixes by literally playing it through their laptop speakers. I have some that like to use earpods because that's where they feel most people consume their music. Me myself, I have a pair of ATC speakers here that I like to check my mixes. So when you're all in the same room, whoever is most comfortable in that particular room has the best vantage point. But again, we've eliminated making a copy and testing it in the car, or just a lot more efficient at doing it this way. And again, it does, as much as we do like to be in the room and have some time together, and it's actually it's shrunk the world in the sense that people can be in different parts of the world, parts of the country listening, whereas before we'd have to figure out everyone's schedule, fly people in, and so we've saved a great amount of money, just being able to do things this way. And again, I mean, I think as far as efficiency, I think that we can't really beat it. And again, sometimes we do mix this way, and then we get things to a point where we feel they're really close, and then maybe we do get together for one day and then go through a whole album to make sure everything is seamless. So this really depends on everyone's workflow and level of comfortability. But I mean, I think that this is only going to get better. I think we've made huge strides in as far as the smoothness of how, because for a while we were kind of just using a bunch of different things to kind of make this all work, right? And now companies are kind of realize that, like, wow, this is a real thing, and they're kind of trying to make all the different platforms kind of work as one. So
Yeah, I want to piggyback a little bit, Duro, from the label standpoint. It's not a secret that budgets have shrunk through the years, and I think part of the reason that mix engineers in particular went ahead and started getting their own rooms was because most of us have gone fully in the box because technology is so advanced now with the computers, the speed of computers, the quality of the plugins. I mean, we all have exactly the same tools at this point. I mean, unless someone has a fancy console and whatnot, we all have exactly the same tools. It's just the difference in ear and training. But because the budgets came down, I mean, back in the day, you would book a mix engineer, and then you would also have to book the studio. And then if you
and a bunch of rental equipment gear on top of
that, that's adding all that, and then you add that into the equation, and then a week goes by, they sit with the mix, and then they're like, we just need to do a couple mix changes, and now you have to go back into the studio. And it's not just you're paying hourly at that point, but before Pro Tools was the thing and people were fully in the box, they had to hire an assistant. They had to recall the gear and the console, which took anywhere from 1 to 3 to 4 hours, depending on the size of the session. And there was times that there's some consoles that I can remember that it wasn't an SSL where you looked up at the screen and you turned the knob and it would click to the right spot when you hit the you could see it. I remember having to write a Focusrite console or a Neve console by hand, and you had to, if you were like, think about it now people are hearing inside the box. A client will say to me, can you turn it up half a dB? Okay, that's too much. Go up 0.2. And for anyone that knows, you can actually hear 0.2 dB of a difference. But imagine if you were off on writing a EQ or something on a console, then you had to A/B the
Right. On a console, you don't even, on a console, there is no point to.
right.
You know what I mean? It's just like, just turn it a little bit.
Yeah,
It's
and it
good
just
enough.
doesn't sound right at
Well,
that point,
just
right?
think about what Duro said about the rental gear. Remember, like, what if you have to bring everybody back in and you have to rent that gear again, but you don't get that exact same piece that you were
Exactly.
using the first time around? So, hey, I don't have those Avalon EQs that I rented,
Right.
on the 5th, and today's the 20th, and you're like, oh, hey, man, you know what I'm saying? I need those Avalon EQs together. It's like, oh, yeah, I got a bunch here, but they don't send you the exact same ones that you had. The calibration on them is automatically going to be
Or
off.
different tubes that were
Tubes,
changed.
Yeah,
different tubes,
exactly.
different tubes.
All kinds of things.
So many variables. Yeah.
So
I've
really
had
what
tons of recalls that didn't come back the same.
yeah,
No,
but I mean, for us, as me coming up as an assistant, part of that was great ear training, because you wanted to impress the engineer when they came in, and you would sit there and A/B and be like, okay, why does this vocal sound off? And you would have to go into, Duro's laughing at this, but you go into the I'm sure he had some crappy assistants, but like, you go to the vocal and you're like, okay, there's an LA2, there's an EQ, and there's this. Why is it sounds a little muffled? So is it the EQ or is it overly compressed? So then you would back up off the compressor and be like, okay, maybe it wasn't that. Let me add a little bit more brightness. And by the time the engineer came in, the first thing the engineer did when they sat down in the desk is they're A/Bing the two, between at the time it was probably on a DAT or depending on a 1/2 inch, and they would just listen back and forth. And if it was close, it was close, but it never, I don't think I've ever worked on a song that came back exactly the same. And now it does. Like, it's literally exactly how you left it. And that's the beauty of it. So I think with all of this, there is an efficiency. I think the labels, and Duro, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, because the budgets have shrunk, it actually makes it easier. It also gets the A&Rs, there was a lot of A&Rs that would come into the studio, and there was some that didn't, that would just sit in their offices and wait for the DAT to be sent to them, or the CD for them to listen to, or whatever. And now they could just sit in their office and they could listen to things,
And
it's
it's also a plus for the engineers in regards to income. You know what I mean? So you can just kind of charge your rate, and it's covered you, and it covers your room. You don't really have to like book a room. So it's beneficial also on that side for the budget, and also beneficial for the engineer, because obviously the budgets aren't the same. So we have less for the engineer and less for the studios, and now that can kind of all go to the engineer. And the actual studios that we book are now more creative spaces. Like we kind of gear them around the creation and gathering and people making these records, as opposed to building quote unquote mix rooms.
Totally. And the other thing is that think about the money that you're saving as an engineer. Like, if you're a lot of us live outside of Manhattan, so it's the travel time, the money to get in. You're not sending the label, hey, it's costing X amount.
Yeah, no, that's you think about it. It's like $100. You drive into the city, you pay a toll, you park, you eat a little bit, you blink twice.
And it's not cheap to eat in New York City. So there's a lot of stuff. And also, I mean, just the flexibility. The other thing that, let's say that back in the day, you're getting $3,500 a mix, and now the budget's down to, let's say, $1,500 to $2,000 a mix. You can work on 2 songs in one day if you really want. You could work on multiple songs. You could get bored with one and say, if you're sitting too long on one song, you could close your session, open up another song. For me, I don't know if I could go back to working any other way. And I know I could speak definitely for the 3 of us that we're completely in the box. I mean, there's variables with like analog summing and things like that. But for the most part, it is completely in the box, and the recalls do come back 100%. And I don't know. I feel like there's more pluses than anything. I don't see any questions, and there's quite a few people on here. So
yeah,
start asking some questions, please. Like, but it's how it works now. And I just feel like, even from the label, some of the A&Rs that I've dealt with that don't have the experience, especially the younger A&Rs that didn't come up in the time when you went to a studio to listen to a mix, being able to involve them from the get-go in a mix, and they hear it as it's progressing, and being able to, like, you know, I remember one A&R, I'd said to him, he said, you know, I feel like the vocals could come up. And I said, well, by how much? And he goes, I don't really know, just turn them up. And I said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we stream? He goes, what's that? So I'm streaming with him, and he's able to say, perfect, no, a little louder. And he's like, this is crazy. This is the best thing I've ever done, you know? So a lot of people are still getting educated on this kind of stuff. But for me, I like it more for the collaborative thing. Like, even just the project I've been working on for the last, you know, 48 hours, it's been great with the producer. We sit there and we're having a blast just working together, and I love it. You know, it's great. And on another note, one of the things I've been doing, and the only reason I'm reminded of this is because one of my young Jedis is on one of the participants is being able to teach remotely now, which has been great. You know, teaching people how, you know, about mixing and being able to share your screen and then being able to see what you're doing and not having to be in a traditional classroom, has been a game changer, you know, because they're actually seeing the way that you're working. You're not really,
Right.
they're seeing exactly what it is. They get to see how a professional works. I think the downside of it that I've noticed, and it's something like I'm still struggling with, is if you hire an assistants, part of being an assistant was watching the engineer work and learning from the engineer and watching how the engineer is speaking to the client. I think that's one of the things that's being lost today, because what I'm realizing is some of the young engineers aren't taking criticism well. And one of the things I used to watch is how some of the engineers used to interact with the client, and seeing how they react when a client doesn't really articulate well what they want in the mix, and the engineer has to decipher exactly what to do and what they're trying to convey in their song. So part of that is lost, but being able to teach and showing them what you're doing has been great. Okay, sorry, I'm looking at some of now there's questions.
Oh, yeah, there's tons of questions.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we have a question about latency regarding audio movers.
Okay. So we'll kind of go through these. Oh wow, there's quite a few now. Hold on. Which one audio?
Let's start with the latency on what's the
yeah, I mean, that's a
audio
key
movers.
one. I think we had a gentleman here from Frank. How's the latency on audio movers? So I don't know about you guys, but there is it also depends on the client's internet. It also depends on your internet, but there is a slight latency. It's not going to be exactly on time, but there is a slight latency. But
you could change that from it defaults to half a second.
It can default to half a second. There still is a bit of a latency. I've noticed. I don't like to kind of call it by seconds. I kind of like to say it's kind of like off by almost an eighth note. That's the, you know what I'm saying, when I'm listening back to a track.
Good way to put
that's
it.
How I like to. That's how I like to listen to it. I see it. I was like, it's maybe like you're off by like an eighth. You're listening like an eighth note later than what I would be listening to. But
also too, it's I mean it also changes based on what rate you're streaming at and how much you're buffering, because sometimes you if you're streaming at a higher rate, you'd add a little bit more buffer just to make sure that you don't get any clipping or any cutouts.
Yeah, well, let's go through these a little bit. Let's start at the top. Gavin, we're going to answer your question. I have not.
There's questions there's questions in the chat as well. I think.
Oh my God. Okay, we're being we're being bombarded now. I'm going to start with the Q&As. If you guys can copy and paste your questions on the Q&A, because we have the Q&A open. But do some clients still insist on using tape? I haven't. And if there are clients out there that insist on tape, means you have budget. So please give us a call.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to work on tape and spend as many hours as you want if I'm charging by the hour. So please give us a call. I can be reached at.
Well, to speak to that, I actually I've done that in the past, but I'm actually about to do it on a project that I have coming out in the fall, where we mixed everything in the box, and at the end we're gonna bounce everything
You're bouncing to half inch.
to half
Yeah.
inch. Yes.
Yeah, I have a
So
client who still likes to do that. Ironically, I have a close friend of mine that usually, if I'm in LA, I can actually use his place for that. His place is actually totally set up for that kind of situation
Mhm.
where we bounce down to a half inch. That's if there's a budget for it, and the client really insists that's something that he wants. I've noticed though it's mainly more of an acoustic situation. Like if the music is more of an acoustic type of vibe, that's usually where I find myself getting into that situation where like, no, I really want to bounce down to tape, and it was just like, all right, you know what I'm saying. But if we can budget in the tape, and we can budget in the taking that tape to a mastering engineer who's willing to align a tape machine and master it for him like that, that's fine with me too. You know.
There's one question, Steven, since you all had to say, what are you doing to stand out? We're using our ears. It's years of experience. It's practice. There's really no magic to it, man. It's doing terrible mixes, becoming better, and just becoming a master of your craft. That's it. There's
trial and error, putting a lot of hours in.
no shortcuts. That's it.
There's,
It's
there's not.
practice, being able to take criticism, learning from your mistakes, and moving on. That's the simple answer to that, you know? Um, that's really it. I'm sure you guys can agree with me on that. There's no shortcuts to this. I'm still every day learning something new. I just learned something new last night from my client, and every day's a learning experience. Sean, Sean, Sean Carter's on here. Go figure. With the advancement of remote mixing, what does this mean for younger who may not be able to assist in these sessions? I think I answered that.
Yeah. Well, let me.
Oh, he did. Yeah, I answered. Okay.
Yeah, no, you did, but I will say though that there's still many studios where people are recording and actually
Yes.
making these records. And how I got started as a mixer is I was recording first.
Mhm.
And at the end of every session, when people wanted I guess what you guys would call a bounce, but for me it was either a cassette or a CD at the end of the session, I would say, hey, give me 15 minutes and I'll put something together. And I would use that 15 minutes or ask for 15 minutes knowing that they'd probably stop talking or get distracted, and I'd get 30 minutes, and I'd spend that time really trying to make a really good rough mix for them. And that's kind of how I honed my skills, is just like within those 30 minutes. Like, and that's how I got fast at mixing, was just because I knew I'd have to like speed mix constantly, and then eventually clients would like my roughs, or and they'd come back and then give me opportunity to, maybe next time they're like, oh, you took 30, take 2 hours and see what you can come up with, but you just have to start in those type of situations. And I think being part of the recording, you know the song better than any mixer would, because you were there from the inception, as
Yeah.
opposed to when we mix it, we get it at the end and we kind of have to figure out where it needs to go.
Well, something that worked for me when I started was that I was, since like you said, we did a lot of the recording, and in my case, what got me into mixing was that I was doing so much recording, not just vocals. Like I was, there were a lot of live instruments that I was recording too, and I mean, learning how to, when you learn how to track live instruments really well, and when you know how to track a live band really well, mixing it just tends to kind of like naturally come, because you already have an idea of generally what the instrument sounds like, what the session sounded like when you tracked it, and it's just kind of like more like pushing out all those elements that you remember in the recording process. So going back to what you were saying, Duro, like, what I'm saying, it helps when you record it from the beginning to to the
Right.
to the end,
Right.
And at the end.
And like Marius was saying, because you're there with the producer or the band, and they're saying, oh, we need a little bit more on the kick. Let's, so what they're looking for,
Mhm.
so that when you start to mixing records on your own, you have all these things, and you
And
hear
know
them
how
saying,
and you know how those instruments were recorded, so you already know what was already put into
right,
you know
the intention.
capturing that sound. So now you know how to manipulate that sound.
I still believe that mixing if you want to be a mix engineer, I do think that learning to record and
Yeah.
understanding the nuances of every instrument and
Listen,
vocal and
there's
everything.
no skipping steps.
No.
It's a
Like,
progression. Becoming a mix is a evolution.
yes,
You don't
that's a
just
great way
hop
to
in the
put it.
studio and say I'm going to start mixing.
No, and a lot of people are doing that now because everyone on Instagram is mixed by, and they might have just gotten out of school. And I want to see more guys using the tag name recorded by, because really that to me, if you don't understand what a guitar, how, moving a microphone in front of an acoustic and understanding if you move it closer to the frets, you'll get thinner sound in the body. It's more of a, like you have to understand all that. Even drums, I mean, back in the day, I remember assisting some engineers that really never, some of them didn't even touch a drum kit. And I walked in one day and there's like SM57s on a kit. And I'm like, wait a second, you know what I mean? Is this like, am I being punked right now? So, that's important. And I mean, I kind of got started the same way MarioSo did. I've assisted guys, I've been in the studio working with Duro and Maserati and some of the other engineers, just learning, being a sponge, being an intern, learning how to make the best coffee I can possibly make, understanding that certain engineers like certain things, where they like the cigar or certain cigarettes or a drink or something, you bring it for them and they would make the session easier. All that is lost in that. But recording, Duro said there's still plenty of studios. I want to keep moving on the questions because we have so much. How do you manage client deadlines? Let's that's a good one. You're honest with the client. If it's a label, they'll tell you. Usually a client will give you the deadline unless a label says we need this by tomorrow. Can you do it? The way that I work is my manager will say, we'll give the client a 7 to 10 day window. And the 7 to 10 day window from the moment, and that's not saying from the moment they pay. It's the moment that I listen to the tracks, I get the files, because I want to make sure the files are great. And once I prep it, and I let the client know your files are prepped, then we book it from that time. And the reason it's a 7 to 10 day turnaround, unless specifically they'll give you a date, but what happens with that is we're artists. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, I may not be feeling it. Another time you might get hit up by a label that day and say, can you deliver this tomorrow? And then you can push something, because obviously certain things, it becomes, you want to try to accommodate people. So it's really about being honest with the client, following through on your deadline, and it's just about being honest and being realistic, and that's part of it, because then people will keep coming back to you if you keep delivering on when they want their stuff done. That's the simple answer to that. I don't know if anyone wants to
I mean,
piggyback
just
off
basic
that.
communication, man.
Yes.
Just communicating with your client and explaining to them the situation. Like if a client wants something from one day to the next, then you have your manager, speak to them, and you come to an agreement. As like, okay, well, this is what I'm gonna need on my end, and as long as they have a clear understanding of that, then if I gotta pull an all nighter, there we go. Some coffee, here we go. That's it.
Except for the Yankee logo, but that's a whole nother.
Hey.
So that, Duro, you want to answer anything
No,
like
I mean,
that?
I think you guys pretty much covered that one. I see the next one's about audio movers again.
All
Audio
DAWs.
movers, you don't need a DAW at all. All you need is a web browser. I listen using either Safari or Chrome all the time. The engineer will just send you a link. You click on the link, and that's it.
You
Yeah.
can use it, and you can use all DAWs for it, just to
Oh, yeah.
add to that.
Mhm.
And
And
I
that,
have noticed that it works better with Chrome than all the other.
yeah, and
Well,
Safari,
actually,
there
well,
is a
there's a new Safari version now that works. Before
Oh,
I used to have issues, but now
yeah.
Safari is just as flawless.
great.
I've been putting a lot of my clients onto the app, and that was really crucial because I was working with a client. He was in Ohio, and while we were reviewing the mixes, he was like, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna listen to my car." He literally just plugged into his car.
Mm-hmm.
He was on Zoom, clicked on the app, and basically everything, all the communication, everything was done while he had his phone plugged into his car. And we were listening to the mix, and he was speaking to me through the phone, but at the same time, audio movies were streaming. Um, it was even I was kind of surprised at how good it, everything works so seamlessly.
Let's answer Steve. Steve, what's up, man? I'm on the Sound Toys website, huh? Do I need a mic pre if I already have a great saturation plugin? You need a mic pre. You need to convert a mic signal to line signal. Simple as that.
Yeah.
There's no plugin that's, I mean, if you want to use a plugin, there's still hardware. If you got the UAD stuff, you can use virtual mic pre's, but it's still a mic signal that you got to plug into. That's the quick, simple, and precise answer to that question.
Yeah, just to get more on the technical side, there's actually, I think, what is it, a minus 52 dB difference between mine and mic and line
Yeah.
signal. So yes, you do need a mic pre.
Anonymous, hello. I have doubt of every mix that I do. Is it the same for you? Every single mix, I doubt myself. The best thing to do is take constant ear breaks. I like to go for walks. Sometimes I meditate. Sometimes I'll take my son to the park. Just anything to get away from music, I do. Whenever I doubt myself. Sometimes when I'm working on multiple projects, which is mostly all the time, I just will open up another song and keep working if I don't feel inspired or if I doubt myself. Generally for me, as it gets late, my ears get worn out, and I know that when I start pushing things a little too much and my ears hurt, that will let me know that I'm
Yeah, usually when you start listening louder and louder, or just, or making things brighter, or it's time to give it a break. But I think there's a point though. You have to, I guess, at a certain point you have to get comfortable with just letting it go.
100%.
Mhm.
Let's answer Shelly. How do you recommend finding work in mixing? That's
a
a
tough
good
question.
Yeah, that's it. For me, I believe in this. I believe in word of mouth, right? I believe building your own reputation. I don't believe in promoting if you don't have anything to promote. My whole career has been built on word of mouth. So if you make one client happy, they're going to recommend you to another and another and another, and it becomes a chain reaction. It takes time. Mixing is not easy. That's why I always say it's always better to start recording, because once you become a good recording engineer, and I'm not talking about recording in the sense of like, it's not just about making somebody sound good on a microphone. It's learning how to interact with the client. And you learn a lot of interaction when you're recording, I've had label guys in the past sit with me, and when I was recording a lot, I was kind of like a clown in the room. I always said I can control a room, and meaning control a room is there's many ways of controlling a room, and part of it was to make everything sort of light in the room and making people comfortable, and putting pads out so people can write things with sharpened pencils or pens, and putting waters and putting fruit and doing things that make the client comfortable, and learning how to give you got to remember something. When you're in a studio, you're in the you see the artist is in their vulnerability. This is their art, this is how they express themselves. So I would start there. Mixing is hard because you need to deliver, you have to deliver, and you have to be good at mixing in order to get more work,
Yeah,
it's
and
really
and
that simple.
again, I'm sorry not to cut you off, but
Yeah,
again,
no.
also like you were saying, was building relationships and confidence of your clients. People need to feel like they can trust you to deliver, and a lot of times that bond and that trust is gained in tracking sessions. You know, um, again, like kind of what I said before, like I would work really hard on doing really good rough mixes, and eventually clients started coming back and to not only have me record but to mix. And again, having that personal relationship or having that good rapport with people like to work with people they know and they feel comfortable with. So even if the skill set, I mean, I see it in many times, even if the skill set isn't all the way there yet, they rather work with that person because of that level of comfort. In the beginning of my career, I leveraged my relationships and my ability to get cool with artists, to give me opportunities that, I mean, I guess I earned them in the way of building a relationship, but I didn't necessarily have the skill set. And but I worked really hard to get my skill set to catch up with um, my relationships. Because if my skill set didn't catch up, then relationships can only get you so far. Because you at some point you have to deliver. So I think, like Ariel was saying, is I think you have to build and you have to market yourself. You have to build your discography. Um, I didn't have Instagram, but you guys do, and you guys have other ways to social media to market yourself. You just have to just try a bunch of different things.
Let's go. Have any of you used the SSL 6 desktop mixer? I know you're all on the song, but uh, go ahead, Mario. So
I haven't used it off the bat. Like I haven't used it. I've actually gone away from more and more out of the box situations because of it's just when it comes to working with clients, it's just faster if I could just kind of like if we have to jump back on something that I did, maybe you'd be surprised. 2 months ago, actually, I got a phone call the other day regarding a mix that I did almost a year ago, and like the client said, "Oh, hey, I'm finally gonna put that song out. Can we make a slight change?" And this is something I did like almost a year ago before the pandemic. It was like I think I did this maybe in 2019, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." I had to like recall a bunch of gear and look for the recall sheets and whatnot. I would have been there forever, but it was in the box, and we were able to get it done in a matter of like 10 minutes using audio movers and just keeping it in the box. So I tend to keep away from those things. There are a lot of plugins though that can give you the same amount or that same sound that you're looking for from like using something like an SSL. A lot of things out there. I mean, we can go days discussing different combinations and chains of plugins that you can use that'll give you that same sound.
yeah,
But
I mean,
yeah.
for me, let me interject with the analog side of it. I was a summing box guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I had deliver a mix. This was 9 years ago in 48 hours. And I ended up having my summing box, one of the op amps blew out, and it would take in 2 weeks to get it back. So I went in the box that day and I never went back. And that's when I learned, like, I'm not depending on this anymore. You know what I mean? So now with, yes, you can have the argument, like, what if your computer crashes? Well, that's why we have time machine backup.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst case scenario is you had a time machine backup, your computer goes kaput. You can either go to the Apple store, pick something up, whatever you can do, but you still have your backup and you can reinstall from the time machine backup. So there's definitely a workaround to that. And it's happened to me in the past. I just stopped. I mean, Duro can probably speak very extensively because he was a big analog guy and then jumped right to digital. And I don't think he's looked back since.
Yeah, no, I've been in the box, wow, for a long time.
Longer
I
than
first
me.
got in the box in like 2004.
Yeah. Yeah. So hope that answered it. Any tips on getting started with virtual teaching side of things? I don't know. I feel like YouTube is quite convoluted with teachers now. I think because there's reputable engineers that are accessible now, it's a good way to go. It's not saying that you can't teach, but a lot of people really want uh they really want to learn from industry professionals, and they're out there. I think the best thing to do for virtual teaching is to be able to, like, if you have a discography, get a website together, you know put your credentials on the website, do like a page, like the way that I do is I call it virtual mentoring. I hate calling it teaching or anything like that. It's mentoring. It's not like I don't a lot of my students don't come on there and ask, they're not new to the game per se. They're new in the sense that they're still in their early stages of mixing, but they're not like, how do you EQ a kick drum? It's nothing like that. So it's about, again, Duro touched on it before, marketing yourself and really showing your credentials out there. And you have to sell people on why you would be a good teacher. For me, it was natural just because I started doing master classes and seminars and things like that. And then next thing I know, I had content to put on a website to be able to show that I'm a teacher, you know, and I don't have any education as a teacher. So that would be the best thing to start, you know. I mean, there's no shortcut to it. Nothing in this business is shortcut. If not, everybody would be doing it. It's the hardest business, in my opinion, aside from maybe acting or something like that, you know. But it's, you know, it's just about putting your credentials, website, social media, marketing, all of that. Hi, I'm super new to the industry, still in the early. Do you think it's necessary to go to school for sound engineering? Can I learn on my own? Yes and yes. You guys can help me answer this. I do believe in education. There's more education out there now, like engineering, audio engineering. There's so many jobs out there now, in the sense that it's not just mixing. There's a lot of podcast positions now. You can't even imagine, which you can make a really good, a decent to great living doing it. Which some people love podcasts.
Yeah.
Live sound. I mean, there's so many jobs in the education now. So many colleges offer audio technology programs. And because of that, I think people are looking more for the degree, but I don't think to work in a studio you need the degree. But again, I think if you get education and you supplement that with what's out there, like YouTube and other things, I think that's a really good way.
I
Um,
like to. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Duro.
now I was going to say, in regards to, you know, education, I went to audio school for one semester. In that one semester, though, I learned a lot of basic things about signal flow. I learned about microphones, um, you know, polar patterns. You know, this like a lot of basic things. But I was also interning at a studio at the same time, so a lot of those things I was learning in school, I was immediately going to the studio and asking questions about those same things, by people with asking those questions to people who are actually doing it. So it kind of expedited my learning process. But I do think that having some sort of structured foundation, or learning, you know, some sort of course, I think it does help a lot. You know, you may not necessarily need a 4-year school, or, you know, a super extended program, based on what other resources, you know, you have available to you, and also what type of what type of learner you are. You know, some people are very good at learning things on their own. Some people need things, you know, really spoon fed to them. So I think you really have to know yourself as well, you know, like what type of process works best for you.
Yeah, I think similar like the way what you mentioned, Duro. So in my case, you know, yes, I did go to school, and what I learned was pretty much, you know, I learned the equipment, I learned the signal flow, and for those of you guys wondering what is signal flow, Google that. That's crucial. That's actually the most crucial thing in in an audio engineer's life. And I notice a lot of kids don't really understand it, but you learn those things, and afterwards, yes, I did get an internship at a studio. And what I did with that internship, I applied all the knowledge I had of what I knew, how those pieces of equipment worked, to the studio. Now, that didn't necessarily mean I was automatically, I went from intern to mixing engineer. No, there's still a process. There's still a step-by-step process that you kind of develop into, you know, but you have the knowledge to know how the equipment works. You have the knowledge to know basic, you know, like, again, signal flow. You know the difference between certain cables. Those are things you want to know before you start, you know, either working in a studio as an intern, as a runner, or even as an assistant. And as time goes on, you will develop, you know, that you will learn the protocol of what it is to be in a studio, at the same time taking that knowledge that you learned maybe in a school.
Okay, so we got that one. Some tips on keeping great relationship with clients.
Be cool, man.
Listen,
Be
no,
cool.
exactly. I mean, you know, it's no different than, honestly, any other relationships that you have just in life. I think
Mhm.
you know, you just be a good person. You know what I mean? Just like the same thing you would do, like if it's your friend's birthday, you hit them up and tell them happy birthday. You know what I mean? Just regular, just be a regular person.
Check
Yeah,
your
just be
ego
cool
too.
and be honest, and
Yeah,
don't be disrespectful, even if a client may not agree with you sometimes, and you just don't be disrespectful about it. It's like, listen, man, this is how unfortunately, this is how I feel about this. You might not. It's no different than growing up and not having having a disagreement with a friend of yours. You grew up with in high school. It's no
right.
different. You just
Well, also you have to know your audience too, because you have different relationships with different people. I have some people that play stuff for me, and I'm like, yeah, that's terrible, right? And then other people you don't have that same type of rapport with. You might say, do you ever thought about maybe trying this, or
yeah.
do you think you need that, or what if that was I don't know, a bass instead of a guitar, or you just make suggestions. So you really have to know the person you're speaking
Yeah,
to.
you don't want to offend anybody's creativity. I know how
You're
that
learning
can.
how to be a therapist also in the room. I know that sounds crazy, but you got to remember something, that music is this artist or producer's baby. And it's basically like you don't want to call their child ugly. You know what I mean? You really, you're there for them. You're a facilitator. That's what an engineer and a mixer and recording engineer, that's what you do. You're there to facilitate, you know what I mean? And the older you get, and the more experience, they come to you for taste. But in the beginning, you have to really learn how to speak to people. Check your ego at the door. There's no egos. Like, I've seen engineers that were at the top of their game that are no longer in the business because people just stopped working with them because
Mhm.
of reputation. That's the best advice we can give, you know what I mean? um we have like 3 minutes. Wow, yes, real quick, we all are on social media and we all engage, so yes, that's a quick one. um I'm looking. I want to have like a really good, since we have any books, movie, podcasts. There's a lot of great podcasts out there, not just for engineering, but Rick Rubin has one about called Broken Record. That's amazing. There's Working Class Audio with Matt Boudreau. That's really good. If you just Google audio engineer, there's a bunch that pop up that are phenomenal, phenomenal books, movies. Tom Dowd movie. Everyone watched the Tom Dowd movie. Tomdowd. If you don't know who Tom Dowd is, you better know
He's,
by the end of the week.
yeah, he is pretty much the father of all of us.
He makes all of us feel dumb because at age 16 he was helping the
Yeah,
American government to
yeah.
build a nuclear weapon. So just when you think that you're a great engineer, you read on Tom Dowd and you're like, this guy was helping to build nukes. So yeah. Um Hello, Brian. How has remote mixing how many projects can you have at once? It depends, man. It depends on
Mhm.
who's putting out records. It depends on the quarter. It depends on so many variables. Summertime, people tend to take off. August tends to be a little slow. Winter seems to be a little quite busy. Sometimes the summers are quite busy too. They have been for 2 years for me. That's
Yeah.
the answer. We have 2 minutes. Go ahead, Mario. So you're popular. Go answer your reggaeton answers there.
My reggaeton
We got
answers. I
one
mean,
minute. We got 1 minute. Oh no,
well,
we
no, I
got
mean,
one
just
minute.
just to follow up with pretty much what we've been saying here, regarding the remote mixing and still managing to work with our clients in this manner, whether if it was before the pandemic or after the pandemic, the technology's there, man. The technology's there. You can maintain relationships through technology. You can maintain quality through technology, and you can maintain integrity through technology. So that's pretty much sums it up for me.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, is that it for us? I would love to answer. There's more questions, but yeah, I think that's it for us. We got like a minute. Is it a way to do a remote recording remotely? There is. I'm not sure how to do it yet though, but there is for sure. and that's 1 p.m. I think that's it for us. First off, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank the mayor's office for having us, the Recording Academy, and I think we are done. So on that note, happy mixing, and practice, 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 and treat everyone with respect. Right? Cool.
Yeah, man.
All right, y'all. Thank you for having us, and thank you for joining. And we'll see you guys soon. All right.
Yeah.
Peace.
Take care, guys.